Wednesday afternoon, 92.1 WROI, WROIFM.com. And on this Wednesday afternoon, we're very pleased to be joined in the studio by the 2nd District Congressional candidate, Mr. Mel Hall. Mel, good afternoon. Thanks for being here.
Good afternoon, Tom. It's great to be here.
You have had a busy day so far in the city of Rochester.
We started early this morning with a meet and greet around the corner, and then we went to the Smith's Farm. We went to the Kiwanis meeting. We talked to folks at the hospital. We went to 4 or 5 small businesses in town, and this is what we do every time when we come to Rochester. As you know, we've been in Rochester many, many times over the last 10 to 12 months. And what I find here amongst small businesses, farmers, folks on the street, people at the flagpole, is that what people want in government.
And what is that?
Is someone who will get something done.
Is that possible?
Yes, it is possible.
Good.
It is possible. I think people, my approach has been since I got in the race that Washington is broken, and fasten your seatbelt on this one, Tom. Both parties are to blame. And so I don't think it is. Sometimes you might hear a Republican say, well, it's all the other party, or you might say a Democrat say, oh, it's all the other party. My belief is both parties are to blame, and because I believe that, I've already said to the House leadership of my own party, in the person of Nancy Pelosi, that I would not support her for leadership moving forward, because my background in business and in the church and throughout my background has been, if you do the same thing with the same people, you're going to get the same results. And we need different results in Washington than we're getting now.
All right, for folks not familiar, tell us about your background.
Sure. I grew up in Grant County, not too far away from here. I grew up on a small farm. I feel like I should use a different word than farm. I went to the Smith's Farm earlier today, and to call that a farm and to call our 60-acre plot of ground that my mom and dad had a farm, there ought to be a different word. But I grew up on a farm, and I grew up like everybody else. I fed the animals before I went to school, and I was driving a tractor way too early, 8 years old, so I hope none of your listeners will report me about that. Drove 2-banger John Deeres. And then in the summertime, my father was also a carpenter, and he repaired the houses and businesses of the doctors and lawyers and business people in Marion. I worked with him, and so I put on shingles and hung drywall and dug trenches, worked my way through Taylor University in Upland, Indiana, and then went to seminary and became a United Methodist minister. And at my request, I was placed in Detroit's poorest and most densely populated community, lived in that neighborhood for 7 years. And that's the experience, which, by the way, is probably the best education I've ever received in my life. That experience helped form my belief in relentless pragmatism. How do we go from here to here to here to get something done? Because we did not think about how to solve all the issues of that neighborhood, much less all of Detroit. But how do you make sure that the kids stayed in school and off the streets, and how to make sure that those who had job training program, which we provided, got a job and knew how to keep a job, and those who needed housing got at least into a place where they turned the heat on October the 15th. Relentless pragmatism, moving here to here to here. Then came back to Indiana, did a degree at Notre Dame in data science, and helped start a small company called Presgani Associates, which measures patient satisfaction for hospitals. I started as the manager of research and development as employee number 34. I was the only person in research and development, and then a year later promoted to director of research and development. Still the only person in research and development. And then a couple of years later, Tom was asked to run the company, and during the 15 years that I ran the company, we added 800 jobs in South Bend, Indiana. And again, through this relentless pragmatism, relying on data and accountability in leadership. And I have never aspired to run for office before.
But you are.
I am. I'm running because I'm convinced we can do better. And while I have followed politics my whole life, Tom, and read about it, and this will probably shock you and your listeners occasionally, I have complained about the quality of candidates. But I have been...
I am shocked.
I know, fasten your seatbelt. But I have been fortunate and blessed in my life. And I feel like I could not look at myself in the mirror if I didn't try to make a difference. And I think I believe in America. I believe in our form of government. I believe in our democracy. And I believe, and I'm convinced, we deserve better than what we're having now. So my focus is on making sure, so I'm not a career politician. In fact, I've already said that I would only serve 3 terms. So I believe the founding fathers had it right, Tom. You go to Washington, you do your service, and then you get back to the real world, whether that is the farm or being a carpenter or whatever one was doing prior to that. And so I've already term limited myself. And I think we need to do something also about getting the money out of politics. I take no corporate PAC money, none whatsoever. I think if you're in Congress, you ought to be required to have a quarterly town hall meeting. Very common sense.
Sure.
You know, you can't run your business unless you meet with your customers.
Right.
You can't run your business unless you meet with those who listen to the radio.
Right.
And so I think it ought to be required, and it's unfortunate that we have to require it, but unfortunately the current representative has not had a town hall meeting in 5 years, and that is not accountable leadership. And so those kinds of basic approaches, and the other thing I would say that I have stood for, we're doing a hardworking Hoosiers tour, and one of the things I say is that, you know, Congress works 3 days a week. 3 days a week for full-time pay, benefits that 98% of the folks in the 2nd District can't possibly attain, health insurance that is the best health insurance in the country, and they work 3 days a week. So at minimum, we ought to require folks to work 5 days a week, report who they meet with, have quarterly town hall meetings, just basic things that one does when one is a leader, and hold ourselves accountable.
So Mel Hall, as a congressman, what would your priorities be?
My first priority would be health care. As you may know, the current representative has voted to take away health care 11 times, and particularly those with pre-existing conditions. And as you know, Tom may know, 1 out of 3 people in the 2nd District, 1 out of every 3 has a pre-existing condition. And right now, they're living in fear that health care rug will be pulled from out underneath them. And we should not have that kind of fear in our life. There are a lot of people who are, you know, have diabetes or have heart issues or any sort of arthritis issues or any number of things that worry every day about not having health care. And I think we can do that. We can accomplish that by continuing to focus on these pragmatic, relentless pragmatic approaches. One, we should require that there is insurance competition everywhere. Right now, only one third of the people who sign up on healthcare.gov live in an area where there's no insurance competition. We all know what happens when there's no competition. Prices have to go up. The American Hospital Association has noted that there are too many unnecessary calls and paperwork and communication back and forth between doctors and nurses and insurance companies to get either a prescription approved or a procedure approved. They estimate $38 billion. That's B with a B. $38 billion is wasted every year. Tom, that is $1,200 for everyone admitted to the hospital. That is unnecessary paperwork, unnecessary administrative costs. So there's a lot of efficiency that we can gain in healthcare.
Okay. That's your number one priority. Do you have others?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Others have to do with, everyone knows, Tom, that the stock market has done very well over the last 3 or 4 years. So my second priority has to do with working folks, people who work for a living, like my dad, who was a carpenter or farmer or sheet metal workers, or people who grow something or build something. So again, stock market's done well. Not everyone knows that about 70% of the people who live in the 2nd District don't own a single share of stock. They work for a living, and their real wages have not increased. There may have been a slight bump in hourly rate, but that has been eaten up by creeping inflation costs. We also know that some folks got a small bonus last year, but that was a one-time bonus and did nothing for the average hourly rate. And so our focus is on working class wages and making sure that those folks in junior high and high school who want to go into the trades are not made to feel guilty if they don't go to a 4-year college. Because again, Tom, there are a lot of people out there who want to make something or build something, and we need those jobs. And those are honorable professions. My dad was a carpenter. He and my mom raised myself and my 3 sisters on his carpenter and farmer's work.
There's a current ad on television now that portrays you as nothing more than a Washington lobbyist, and I'm curious about your take on that.
Well, I know, as we said, I've never run for office before, but I know career politicians who run such ads, like Jackie Walorski, will try to get somebody, a little shiny thing over here that has no truth, to get people distracted from real issues. I have never lobbied a day in my life. Not one. I think the real issue is, why is it that our current representative, 70% of her funding comes from corporate PAC money? Why is it that she does not show up to meet with people? Why is it that she votes a straight party line 98% of the time? And again, between you and I don't know anyone who's right 98% of the time. Those, I think, are the real issues. The others are distractions and, again, sort of typical politics where people cast dispersions that have no basis in truth.
Mel Hall is the 2nd District Democratic Congressional candidate. He's with us in the studio this afternoon. I don't want to take all your time, but I do want to ask you just a couple more quick things. One, Mel Hall's first day in Congress, and he's just taken the oath of office. How do you go to work? What do you do? What priorities set you off, and what do you do on your first day?
The first day is that I get to press for this outline of hardworking Hoosiers that we talk about. 5-day work week, driving dark money and corporate PAC money out of politics, to insist that everyone who is a representative has quarterly town hall meetings, to insist that everyone who has a meeting with anyone that's in an official capacity, that has to be reported out. That sort of transparency and that sort of good governance we should expect, and that's where I would begin. Are you saying then, too, you will be responsible to the constituents? Absolutely. I've been responsible my whole life. When I ran Press Ganey, every month I stood in front of everyone who worked there, and we outlined our targets for the month, that the past month, whether they were red, yellow, green. Didn't do them, kind of doing them, achieved them. And if something was coded red, and my own goals were up in front of everybody as well, we would design 2 or 3 tactics to move the needle. The next month, I went back in front of everybody again, and we again measured, did we move? Did we get the results that we thought? And we did this month after month after month, 15 years. We should expect no less from our elected officials. Tell us what you're going to do and how you're measuring it, and then come back and report to us on what you've done. Not in a television commercial that glosses over, but in a real face-to-face where you take tough questions, because if you can't feel the heat, you shouldn't be in this position. And just stand in front of folks and answer their questions and answer their concerns. Okay, as we wrap this up, Mel, I'm going to give you a chance to make your own radio commercial now. Why do we vote for Mel Hall for 2nd District Congress? We vote for Mel Hall for 2nd District Congressperson because he's a guy whose his entire life has gotten something done, who's been accountable, who has done what he said, and who will continue that. We vote, and who's not a career politician, and who's only beholden to the people of the 2nd District. I don't take corporate PAC money. I don't take dark money. I'm relying on the people of the 2nd District. They are my customers. They are my constituents, and I will listen to them and respond to them. And I will tell you one other thing. I make everybody 2 promises. I promise you, Tom, and all your listeners, that they will not agree with everything that I do or say in Washington. The second promise is I will come right back here to your radio station and hear the music, face the music, feel the heat, respond, hear the questions, just like I did earlier today in a town hall, just like we did in Kosciuszko County, just like we did in Peru, just like we did in Pulaski County. I will do that because that's how we get better, that system of accountability and give and take from an elected representative. Folks who want to know more, you have a website. Yes, we do. melforcongress.com. Okay, just go there and you can find out more about Mel Hall. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time this afternoon. Thanks for coming by the radio station.
Thank
We
you for
appreciate
making
it.
time.
You bet.